Right. We are live and in effect. I know this is just a random live. I just decided to do it. Um, and we'll go live on Friday as well. But this is just a random live that I decided to do. And of course, it's going to make a lot of people upset. But I'm just going to do it, man, because at the end of the day, I've been saying this about all these conscious Negroes. I've been saying that all these conscious Negroes are frauds. I've been saying that Brother Polite's a fraud. I've been saying that Young Pharaoh's a fraud. I've been saying that Nature Boy's a fraud. I've been saying Shaka Bars is a fraud. I've been saying all of them are in it for the same purpose. The purpose of every single last conscious community person you see, save for maybe two. There's two who are actually sincere and actually genuine. But I wouldn't even call them part of the conscious community, although he labels himself as part of the conscious community. But I don't think of him as such. I don't think of him as such. But shout out to brother Hassan, who like really be putting people on game in regards to Haiti and stuff like that. Shout out to him, and also shout out to a brother by the name of Wellness Mogul. Shout out to him too. He be getting people right in the health department. You know what I mean? And he just does it in a sober, calm, cool, collected way. So that's the good thing. But anyhow, let's begin. Um, so in terms of Young Pharaoh, I always thought he from the jump, just listening to him talk, top of the top, top of the top. So in regards to Young Pharaoh, like just listening to him talk and stuff like that, I always found him obnoxious. I've always found him annoying. I've always found him like just like someone who keeps on repeating his words. And I hate to say the reason why he's repeating his words is because he blocks shots with his head when he does his MMA. And when you do combat fighting in general, the goal of combat fighting is to hit and not get hit. You're going to get hit, of course, but the object is to take as much less punishment as possible. He takes a lot of punishment because he already slurs his speech and repeats himself every single couple of sentences. And me being a boxer myself, um, e- me being in the sport of boxing, I understand how important it is to have a solid defense and just be defensively responsible. So I won't have that problem. Like imagine ending your fight career and you slurring your speech and you talking to your kids and stuff like that and you repeating what you say like nah man that's not cool, not what we want. The object of fighting in any sport is to make as much money as possible, compete at the highest level, but retire with all your senses. That's the thing. But he missed that memo. That's why he repeats himself. But I've always said it with all these conscious Negroes, whether it be Dekulu, whether it be Young Pharaoh, whether it be Shaka Bars, whether it be any of them. I always said that the prime reason why they're using these big words and the prime reason why they have an audience is because of the big words. It has nothing to do with what they're quote unquote teaching because of the simple fact that they're not teaching anything that you can really apply to your life. Um, Sorry to say it, but calling a black woman God doesn't get you real estate or calling like or using big words doesn't really get you anything. So like just make it make sense, please. I mean, I never got like why conscious people don't use practical terms or practical means or practical steps towards finding solutions. Taking a step is better than just me saying something like, oh yeah, the mitochondrial DNA means that you're this, that, and the other, and just all this jibber jabber. Come on now. So I guess there was some recent altercations with um with some females in Young Pharoh. And here's my thing. You're the same dude who said the black woman is God. Yet I don't know how true it is. You know, this video was just sent to me from my DMs. I'm not sure what the case may be. There's always two sides to a story, but um your baby mother said that you dragged her, kicked her, and assaulted her. So what part of Black woman is God is that? Please answer me. Um, my whole thing is um, top of the top, brown eyed nurse, top of the top. My whole thing is, and this is just coming from me, if I'm at wit's end with a woman, the worst I'm going to do is yell at her, maybe call her out her name. But I have no need to hit a woman. I'm sorry. Like, why am I gonna hit a woman? All I need to do is walk away. Okay, that's it. I don't need to hit her. I don't need to drag her. I don't care how aggressive she is. Just walk away from drama. That's what uh, I would assume. That's what a smart person would do: is walk away from drama and deal with the woman of your kids at a distance. But he took it a step further. He decided to put hands on her. Now you have him talking about restraining order, this, that, and the other. And it's like, this could have been prevented easily, you know. One of the most conscious things you can do if you're Black is have a solid and stable Black family structure. And although it is hard to achieve that, it's very difficult to achieve that in these times that we're living in. Um, it is possible. And you not working things out with the mother of your kids, or or maybe you not even rolling with the punches with the mother of your kids is all bad, because on one hand you just created another single parent. Like, on one hand you just created another single mother. On the other hand, your audience is going to look at you, and unfortunately they'll probably co-sign your madness. And someone who's not blinded by the sauce is like myself is going to say and ask your supporters, oh, so you support Young Pharaoh, even though he's another example of the problems that plague the Black community, single parent, single parent families, and baby mama and baby daddy drama. Big up Young Pharaoh. Whatever you say, bro. Young Pharaoh is a clown, and anybody who supports Young Pharaoh is a clown too. And so if you support Young Pharaoh, you're a clown. Um, so back to what I was saying though, um, I didn't accuse him of abuse. I just went by what his baby mother said and showed on his live. Um, and that's just all I have to go off of. So, um, yeah. Um, yeah, the thing is, Pharaoh is the biggest simp. If you call a black woman God, you're a simp, bro. Do you even know what a simp is? If you call a black woman God, you're a simp. A simp is someone who plays to a woman's emotions. Niggas like Pharaoh and Polite play to black women's emotions and change their own emotions based off of them. That's a simp. Learn what a simp is first, bro, before talking your crap, okay? And before following behind another nigga who don't got a pot to piss in and who makes shitty music too. But anyhow, as I was saying, when you put black women on a pedestal, your mom's a simp, bro. Your mama and your daddy's a simp. You don't even know what a red pill is, so shut the hell up, okay? But anyhow, as I was saying, um, when you call a black woman God, as young Pharaoh did, when you say that a black woman is more intelligent than a man, as Brother Polite did, you're a simp and you're playing to women's emotions. A real man is going to lead the charge and he's going to get a woman to enhance his what he already has going on. A real man is a builder, not a leecher. Okay, those two are leechers, and young Pharaoh is a leecher. I remember one live where I remember what one live where young Pharaoh actually I think he had like 300 something followers in his live, or even more than that. What he did is he asked all of those followers for money so he can buy an iPad. And it's like, for me, I'm the type of dude that I'm not going to ask for something if I can get it myself. Okay. That's just the bottom line. When you look at the Umar Johnsons, when you look at all these conscious Negroes, they're always asking, 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 asking for something. I remember when Shaka Bars even he was asking Anthony Joshua for donations. And for those of you guys who don't know who Anthony Joshua is, he's a professional boxer. So the thing is, and I tell people this on my personal level, I look at people who go get things themselves. I look at people who don't rely on others to make a way for themselves. Those are the people I look towards, like, and say, okay, yeah, this guy is doing something right. This guy is really doing the work, so to say. So again, I'm gonna drive I'm gonna drive home the point that all these conscious Negroes, from the Brother Polite, from the Nature Boys, from the Shaka Bars, from the Young Pharaohs, all they want is pussy and money and fame and notoriety. They never had any intention of actually, like, I guess you can say, inspiring people to like do different things, like inspire people to, reach their full potential and what have you. It never was about that. It was always about just fame and popularity. It was always about, look at me, look at me. It never was about, um, uh, you know what I mean? Helping people, because the way I look at it, and this is like, this is, let's take a personal trainer, for example, right? A personal trainer is going to help you get into the best shape of your life, right? They're offering you a service that is going to help you, that's going to help you possibly eat better. It's going to make you like have a disciplined regimen better. So you would pay for a personal trainer because you know that that personal trainer is going to give you like the results that you need in order to like feel one of the parts of your body that you need to be filled. So that's the service you would pay for, right? Let's take, for example, um, what's another example that I can use? A nutritionist. A nutritionist is going to help you like make better eating choices. It's going to help you, it's going to cater to what types of things your body needs. So this is a service you would pay for, right? Why should I donate to a service where all the nigga does is use big words and release shitty music and show his fighting? And it's like, hey, can't really fight. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you're already slurring your speech, you're getting hit in the head too much. So why should I pay for something like that? There's nothing of value that I'm getting out of that. There's no value that I would get donating to one of these fake conscious Negroes. You know what I mean? No value comes out of that. That's just the bottom line. And then the one thing is he's been at Nature Boys. He's been at Nature Boy's head. He's been on Polite's head and things like that. But it's like, okay, why are you attacking them and you're doing the same things as them? I don't get that. You know, it's like if you weren't doing the same things as them, then I can see it, but you do the exact same things as them, you know. And another thing that's happening too is, you know, he made people, you know, he talks that black woman is God thing, and it's like, yeah, you can think that, but a continental African ain't gonna think that because, I'm sorry to say, but in my tribe, we're patrilineal. You know, we have like customs and things like that, and you know, my mom is light skinned, and my dad is very dark skinned. So if I were to walk with my mom, many people didn't think that that was my mom. They were like, "Oh, that's your mom? That's your mom?" Because I take after my dad so strongly. So how can you say that you're your mom's you're your mom's child and come with that black woman is God shit when I look exactly like my dad? You know what I mean? Dark skinned, um, tall, beard, same eyes, same face, same cheekbones and everything. I don't look like my mom that much. Took after my dad. But and then he goes at different ideologies that don't line up with his own. And I don't even know what kind of ideology he follows because of the simple fact that he changed his name so many times too. At first, he was Walaikum Salam Rahmatullah Barakatuhu Siditahi. I'm learning Somali, bro. As a matter of fact, I've been sleeping on the the Somali uh, the Somali element in Africa. I've been sleeping on it deeply, and so I'm doing my research on it. You know, but yeah, I'm just talking about another conscious. Yeah, yeah. How are you doing? Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm still working on the Somali language too. I'm still learning more and more each day. You know, but anyhow, I was just talking about these conscious Negroes, and unfortunately, the one I'm talking about, he bashes Islam too. He's another Islam basher as well, and it's like, okay, you're bashing Islam, but you don't have anything better to offer. Like that's the whole thing. Like I don't get like, um, and your evidences are coming from sources that you say you don't even like. Um, the other thing that young Pharaoh did too is through all this black woman is God stuff, he loves to swirl. You know, yeah, they're two different guys because this Pharaoh, um, he's been by a lot of different names. His first name was Young Pharaoh Allah, older Billah. Then it became Pharaoh Aten, and I think now it's just Young Pharaoh. The thing is, though, bro, is that why would you even want to be known as Pharaoh? Whereas Pharaoh is, we know pharaohs to be tyrannical. You know, you saw what the pharaohs did to the children of Israel, Bani Israel. You know, so him just be wanting to be known as a pharaoh will raise a red flag to me. You know what I mean? Like that, I would be like, yo, why is this fool calling himself pharaoh? You know, but anyhow, there was something else that was said about him that I found quite surprising too. Uh, someone someone actually told me that Um, man, you can get up on the panel, bro. You can get up on the panel. Say no more. I'm gonna get you on the panel, man. Easy call. Let me invite you, man. Easy call. Put the link in the I'm gonna put the link in the chat box, okay? And you can get up here, man. Yeah, I can tell you what's going on. Hold on. Hold on just a minute. Yeah, that's all you had to say, bro. Yeah, you want to come up on the panel, man. You can come up on the panel. Easy call, bro. There you go, man. Click the link, come up on here, you know. Yeah, I can give you like a little bit of yeah, yeah, definitely. Do your prayer, do what you need to do, and we can talk about it, you know, because I'm gonna tell you something, bro. It's not just the women, you know, it's not just the Western women, it's these Western men who are enabling them too. And young Pharaoh is one of them. You know, the as soon as he came with that black woman as God and stuff like that, but then he comes around and then disrespects black women in the highest way. It's like, okay, not only are you making it bad for yourself, you're making it bad for dudes who like want to keep things black. You know what I mean? Like it's it's crazy, man. These Negroes are sad, bro. Negroes are sad. But you do your prayer and I'll just keep on talking. But yeah, there was another time where, you know, he was pointing fingers at Polite for scamming, but then he comes around and scams. It's like, huh? Like you're pointing fingers at another dude for scamming, yet you were scamming at the same time. Come on now, give me a break. Like make that make sense. I'm telling you, bro. That's why you never see me engage with these conscious Negroes, bro. There's nothing to engage about. They bring nothing to the table at all. You know, it's sad though that people go for it because they like big words and they like their ego struck. That's the thing. Um, they strike the ego. People like to have their ego struck, but thing is if you really love a person, and this is just my personal opinion because it's happened to me. Hell, it happened to me. It happened to me last weekend. um, I remember. Oh shoot, what happened? Okay, yeah, I remember last weekend. You know, I came up kind of short in one of my endeavors, and one of my old heads was like, "You know, I don't sugarcoat crap." I'm like, "Yeah, I know you don't sugarcoat anything, so let me have it." So he let me have it, right? He let me have it. I had to take it on the chin and I had to say, you know what, man? Okay, fair enough. I got you. Okay. And so that's a sign of someone who loves you. That's a sign of someone who really wants the best for you is is someone who's gonna tell you what you need to work on. Is someone who's gonna tell you where you're coming up short. That's a sign of someone who's conscious. That's a sign of someone who's woke. They're going to actually tell you, here's where you lack at. Here's here's where you need to work on. Okay? Not someone who's going to say, "Oh, you're a god." Not someone who's going to say, "Oh, black woman is God." That that doesn't do nothing. That does nothing to make you better. Okay? Yeah, we don't like the truth most of the time. We don't like it. Okay? It's a bitter pill to swallow. But here's my thing. Wouldn't you rather let the truth make you better as a person rather than just being gassed up and, you know, going off the gas? Wouldn't you rather have that instead of, you know, just having your ego struck? I just want to know, you know, let me know. Let me know for real, you know. And so we find ourselves in this situation with young Pharaoh, and people are in an outrage. People are like, yo, like he's doing this, he's doing that, and stuff like that. And me, I'm like, why are you surprised? Like, you guys are like surprised. Like, could you not see this was him all along? Like, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised. He showed his colors more than one time, you know? The thing is with me is that I don't need the label of conscious. I don't need the label of woke. I don't need that label. You know what I mean? Um, I'll give you an example. I used to, before the pandemic, I used to coach kids in track and field. You know what I mean? Um, if I could bring out the best in that kid, I would feel like I did something good. If I brought out the best in the ability of that kid and made them do things that they didn't think they can do, I would feel like I'm winning, right? But if I just told that kid you're a god and that your black mom is a god too, then I would feel utterly stupid for doing that because I'm not giving him any kind of currency that he can take with him in his life. Because when you look at sports, that can apply to different things in your life, you know, whether you're in track and field, whether you're in baseball, whether you're in basketball, whatever your sport may be, okay? The lessons learned in sport can apply to lessons in your life. Um, and so I don't see how using big words and making doo-doo ass rap videos with no substance in the words you're saying, it's going to translate to any helpfulness in different people's lives. You know, there's different types of currency in your life. There's the money currency, you know, that we use to survive and use to buy our yeah, that we use to sustain ourselves. That's one of the currencies. Then there's this one another type of currency is the social currency where, you know, you're talking to people, asking if people are okay, asking if how their life is concerned, you know, just showing that you care. That's a currency too, right? Then another currency, because there's all types of currencies, man. But another currency that you can give people is inspire them to be great, inspire them to do more, inspire them to be better than they were the day before. I'm sorry to say it, but with all these conscious Negroes, I don't get that. I don't see that with them. I don't see them like really inspiring like a generation to do better. I see them inspiring a generation to still do the typical nigga shit. Like I'm just being real, you know. But as I said, man, the panel is open. Anybody can hop on the panel. I want to know what y'all think, man, about the whole situation. I want maybe someone has a different view that can like look at it from like different lenses that I'm looking at it, you know, because the lenses I'm looking at it from is just that like, yo, this dude has been like this, you know. It's just that now his true colors are coming out and people are all surprised and stuff. Like I'm like, man, why are you surprised? It's nothing to be surprised about. He's always been like this, you know. Another thing I want to say about Young Pharaoh too, and this was stupid. This was very, very dumb. But for people who follow boxing, there was a boxing fight where um it was Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Um, yeah, me personally, I was going for Deontay Wilder to win. Yeah, of course, I wanted Deontay Wilder to win, but I had to still accept that Tyson Fury whooped his ass, fair and square. You know, so young Pharaoh goes on a tirade saying that Tyson Fury cheated, that um, he put something in his gloves, that his gloves weren't padded, give Deontay Wilder his belt back, and things like that. He even went to the furthest extreme and he tried to demonstrate throwing a punch to show the difference between a glove with padding and a glove with no padding or something like that. He tried to do some kind of dumb demonstration. And I was like, man, this Negro can't even throw a jab correctly. I'm like, so he ain't showing nobody shit. I'm like, man, I'm like, get the hell out of here. And so he goes on this tirade, goes on this tirade, goes on this tirade about Deontay Wilder and his gloves and stuff like that. And it's like, bruh, he just got his ass whooped. That's the bottom line. He was not ready for Fury. Fury put on a lot more weight. Fury learned how to ride ride the right hand when he threw it. But you're trying to like clout chase and get your name up by saying he cheated and things like that and telling people to give the belt back and things. And then you make it about race and stuff like that, where the better man won that night. It had nothing to do with race. It's just the better man won the match. Now, if it comes up in the in and they investigate into him cheating, then obviously they can reverse that the fight even. They can reverse the result of the fight. So I don't like that crap, bro. I don't like people who don't take responsibility for their actions. In fact, that's why I'm pretty much my circle is pretty small because in my circle, everybody has to be getting better and everybody has to call others to account for things that they may have done and they have overlooked. And I'm sorry to say I don't see that in the conscious community. You know. Okay, let's see. Cool. Get you on. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you doing, brother?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I forgot how to say how are you in Fulani.
Man, since we're practicing the Somali, man, I'm just gonna do the city Taha.
All right. Okay. Sidetahai.
Yeah, city Taha. Yes, yes,
All right.
yeah.
Aniga wafia nahai. So
I'm still
Aniga
learning.
masi detahai.
I'm
Yeah.
still learning
So
myself.
even I am. As a matter of fact, I just got cussed out the other day. I bothered her too much with too many questions at one time. And she
Yeah,
said, "You stop asking me about grammar. I just know how to speak it. Stop asking me to explain it." So I had to tease her. I had to tease her and say, "Well, now if you're gonna sit up here and explain to these Bedouins how to speak English, then how come you can't explain to your African husband how to speak an African language?" And
exactly.
just to mess with her, because that's what I'm, as a conscious man, I'm supposed to do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Definitely, most definitely. Yeah.
mhm.
It's funny because I was just just doing my research about because like commercially, like West Africa, like a lot of people show West Africa and stuff like that. And so me, I was like, man, let me research more into East Africa though. And so I was just like looking at Eritrea and things like that. And then like Somalia and Djibouti came up too. Um the thing that I found that was crazy, and this is like really crazy, um, is that the distance between the Horn of Africa and Arabia is only like 22 miles. Like the sea is only 22 miles between each other. So it's like they're basically neighbors. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when people get to talking, I understand why they say those 22 miles have made a big cultural difference, and I get why they would say that. But
Yeah,
even the conscious community, for all of their talk, they fail to actually believe their own. They'll believe someone else's propaganda, and they will forget their own truth, something that they
yes,
knew about that was
exactly.
correct, and that is that that 22 miles does in fact make a difference. It is why the people on the eastern side of the Red Sea are as African as they are, or as black as they are, because the 22 miles, it used to be less than that during the last ice age. And that was why there are people outside of Africa to this day. People had migrated outside of Africa more than once, but they didn't survive long. And the lineage has stopped. But the last time that someone migrated out, it was a small group. And this is in a documentary from 1999, narrated by Danny Glover, called The Real Eve. The ice age was in effect. The sea level was even lower than it is today. You could see the islands between the eastern coast of Africa and the tip of Yemen, and so they migrated across. And it was a different climate zone just across that set of islands that you could hop and stair step from one to the next to get to what's now Yemen and the Arabian Peninsula. It was a different climate.
Exactly.
So that's why
And
you have anybody living outside of Africa today. And so outside of what we consider Africa today. And the fact is that back then, during that time, people living around the Red Sea had not divided that region into Asia and Africa.
right, right. And that's what I was getting
That was
at
done
with.
later.
Yeah, no, and that's what I was getting at Young Pharaoh, is that like you shouldn't have to destroy another person's ideology to stand on your truth. You know, we have our saying "Lakum dinukum waliya din," to you your way, to me my way. You shouldn't have to like bash another person in what they believe in order to pump yourself up. You shouldn't have to do that. You know what I mean? And so that's one of the things that turned me off to him. and things like that. It's like he would bash other people's belief system because even me, I have a different belief system, obviously, from the many people who I live here with in the West, but you'll never hear me just like bash what they believe in. It's like, okay, that's your choice. You know what I mean? You decided to believe in that, fine. Okay? Just don't impose your beliefs on me. And I treat them with the same respect. If someone asks something, if someone asks something about something, then I'll be happy to answer it. But I'm not going to just go around parading and trying to bash others to get my point across. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's the one thing about the young Pharaoh character that is like, yo, like you don't have to insult other people to like get your point across, bro. Even if you have no point, you know, um, you don't have to do that. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like where I was getting at. And another thing that I was getting at, and then I'll let you talk, is this young Pharaoh character. Um, I don't know if he, I don't really know if he was aware of what he did, but one thing he did is, and he's not the only one who did it, but one thing he did is by calling the black woman God, um, he unleashed a I guess you can say he unleashed a
And
what's a good
this is
word?
why
No,
a good
hold
word.
on
Mhm.
just a second. He unleashed a phenomenon. Yeah. He unleashed a phenomenon where women in the conscious community, because they are called God and they're called goddesses, that in essence they can do whatever they want and they're not being held to account because they've been called god and goddesses. One example of this right now is there's this one woman, she was called god and goddesses and stuff like that, but the thing is she's rode like a cot carousel to a point where she has herpes and she's still not being held to account because of that. So he's created the young Pharaoh in the pole license and unfortunately the Umar Johnsons, they have created this phenomenon where by calling the black woman God, um, they actually make her more promiscuous and more entitled. You know what I mean? I don't know if they know they're doing it though. That's the problem.
They may not start off like that, but eventually they're going to realize that they're doing it. So it's much like a lot of the feminism that goes on. A lot of the younger ones don't realize the extent of what they're doing. They don't. They're when they're in their early 20s. They don't know that they're being trained to be at war with men. When they realize it, some of them show regret. Others of them actually double down. They say, "Well, now I'm aware that this is war and that this is completely against men, and I wouldn't want anybody doing this to my son. And it's the exact opposite of what I would want if I was a man, and I'm gonna keep on doing it." And it's the same thing here. You have people in the conscious community that may not realize in the beginning what they're doing and how they're gassing these ladies' heads up. The problem is that as time goes on, they're bound to realize it. And the question becomes, even in the black community, which men do these conscious guys identify? And so some of them are going to identify with the men who have been asked to sacrifice everything in exchange for nothing. And they're going to say, well, that's not, it's not a fair deal for them or for us, so to speak. But then there are going to be other guys like this that are going to say, well, so what? Real men do this because they're not going to be able to get their mothers' voices out of their heads. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. Their dads have been kicked out the home. There are actually more dads that are in their kids' lives, but not necessarily under the same roofs as the children. And so we got a lot of these, just like we got these ladies who can't get their daughters, I mean, their mothers' voices out of their heads. It's the same with a lot of sons. They can't get their mom's voices out of their heads. and they see things and they identify with their moms when they're wrong, and they're going to keep doing these things that we see. But one thing they do learn is that because of the emotionalism of the platform of their mothers, they can use that to easily scam people. People who stand on the same platform as their moms are easily emotional, and they're easily riled up. So therefore, they make good, easy targets to scam. And honestly, if I was on that platform, the way that I think, I would have eventually either left the platform or I would have started scamming.
Yeah, yeah, you do got a good point. Another thing too that um this individual does, this is the whole thing too. Um, and it comes again with the standards, you know. Um, believe it or not, too, you know, a lot of like rappers and a lot of the modern rappers are betas, you know what I mean? And also to a certain extent too, you have a lot of athletes who are beta, you know what I mean? Um, and so they were never learned, they were never taught, you know, how to deal with women. So they you know, they learned as they go along, and they became gullible because now they have a lot of money. So a lot of women are coming at them now, right? So
Hmm.
they were never taught how to weed like women out, or or what have you. And so with this young Pharaoh character, you know, he actually promotes like kind of being beta and kind of being subservient to a woman. Whereas now, because you know, he's going through baby mama drama and stuff like that, he pulled it, he went to the next extreme. Now instead of going from one extreme, he went to the next extreme. And the next extreme is he's saying that yeah, don't deal with women because you may have to kill them or you may have to beat them up. You know what I mean? So it went from one extreme to the other extreme. Whereas the right way to do it is, as you said before, you just starve these women. That's the best way to do it. You just starve these women until you are in a situation where you know you have a good one that's going to be there. You know, the a one that you're going to be able to settle down with. But the best thing to do, as you said, is to starve the woman and up your resources and up your assets so you can have leverage. And that's the one thing that he's never said, talked about. He's never talked about acquiring assets. He's never talked about like becoming the best version of yourself. He's never spoken about these things. You know what I mean? He's only spoken about like conspiracy theories and why the black woman is God, and and because he's only did that, that's why he has a majority female audience. You know what I mean? But now he's backtracking on these words, you know.
Well, for him to do it now is he's going to have to come up with a more reason if he's going to say something like this. Now, if he says, "Well, I was wrong and I was mistaken," then he has more credibility when he changes his platform and he changes what he says. But that's not what I hear you saying that he's been doing. Apparently, he's been saying that they're gods, goddesses, and then he gets his heart broken, or he doesn't, but somebody else around him does. And whatever the case is, he then turns around and says that you must leave them be. Well, see, when you say that you don't worship as you used to worship, you must admit that there was either something missing or something erroneous or both about your previous worship, who you worshiped or how you worshiped, or both. You got to admit it at some point. And he worshiped not only a woman, I mean, he worshiped a creation in the first place. You and I are naturally going to say, Na'udhu billah, we're going to seek refuge from ever being like that. But on top of that, he turned around and worshiped. Not only did he worship women, but he worshiped the women that are the most at war with their own men.
That
Second,
part right
or
there, bro. That part right there. Keep on going.
he worshiped the women that hate their men the most, either the most or the second most. It's hard to tell if it's the Western Karen or if it's the Western Boom Chic and Von Quisha that hate their men the most. It's hard to tell which one hates their men the most. But whichever one of them's first, the other one's second, and he chose the one that actually got her hatred of her own men from the other woman that she also has every reason to hate. So he's worshiping the first or second most hateful, but certainly the dumbest. Certainly the one that has a habit of listening to her enemies and turning against her allies. That's the one he chose. He has not come forward and said, well, I was wrong in my worship. Now, if he says that, at least I'd say, okay, well, then he turned over a new leaf. Maybe he's on to something. But I didn't hear you say that that's what he said.
No,
But
he
we're going to have to
hasn't.
tell.
You know, he hasn't. uh, Um, he hasn't admitted to that. The thing is about these conscious Negroes too is they won't admit to their mistakes. Like they won't hold themselves to account for the BS that they say. You know what I mean? And so yes, there was one conscious Negro who said that basically you have to just be built in order to deal with all of the toxicity that comes with a Western woman and most notably a Western black woman. Young Pharaoh was the same thing. You know, Young Pharaoh basically said that, and you know, he was just trying to cap for and justify the toxicity by calling them gods and goddesses rather than holding them to account to be better. Okay. And he hasn't backtracked on that. He hasn't said, well, you know what, I was wrong for calling them gods or goddesses. Um, I was wrong for my quote unquote mitochondrial DNA theories and stuff like that. Um, because I said earlier in the broadcast that, you know, my dad is extremely dark skinned and my mother is extremely light skinned. I took after my father though. I'm like dark brown skin. And, you know, a couple of my siblings took after my mother's complexion, but at the same time, you can still see my father in my siblings. And uh and it's the same thing though, however. You know, he never really talked about the importance of like black fatherhood and stuff like that. He never like really implemented like, for example, like he never really implemented or encouraged like outdoorsmanship and things like that. Like being that alpha male, being that classic Renaissance man. He never encouraged those things. And so that's why I didn't like really rock with him because of that, because it was all about women. It was all about stroking their egos and stuff like that. It was never about like making a male better. He never talked about like, for example, like any kind of means at possibly creating different like ways to get your resources up. It was always black women as God, um, ancient Egypt, this and that. And the thing is, he's never stepped foot in Egypt. You know what I mean? And so, and and on top of that, I don't think he's ever read a book on Egypt either. You know what I mean? And so he, as you said before, he took that black woman is God thing, ran with it, and because he ran with it, it gave him the resources and the audience and the following and the finance and monetary he monetarily gained from it as well. But now, as I said before, it's to the other extreme. You know, um, It's to the other extreme now. He's suggesting that if you do deal with black women, you may have to kill them or you may end up beating them up. It's to that extreme. He took, as I said before, he took one extreme and then went to the next extreme. And so for me, as I said before, it's straight down the middle, right? You just don't deal with them. You don't have to deal with them, you know. And um you can save your energy in deal by not dealing with them. But for him to encourage, like, well, not necessarily encourage, but for him to suggest that you may have to kill them or you may have to beat them, that's a beta male move there too. You know, an alpha is always gonna hold his cards right, and he's not gonna suggest anything like that. I don't know any alphas who talk about killing a woman. You know, I'm just saying. But go ahead and continue on with what you were
Well, can
saying
I
about,
roughly
huh?
how old is Young Pharaoh?
Um, if if I were like a guessing man, I would say he's in his like mid 20s.
Okay.
If I were to, yeah, if I were a guessing man, I would say like he's in his mid 20s or so, mid 20s to late 20s, maybe even early
Okay.
30s. I don't know. Maybe even early 30s. To be honest with you, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like he could be in his early 30s and still learning. So he may have
Yeah.
really believed what he was saying before, and then he's come to see the error of his ways, and he's now learned what he did not know before.
Hmm.
When people do this at those ages, and I'm going to include the early 30s,
Hmm.
not because I'm saying that guys are stupid, but because of how in the dark we men are about women in general, which is by their
Hmm.
design. I'm going to say,
Hmm.
okay, well, even at that age, there's certain things that you're going to still be learning about them. And so, even up to that age, the oldest that you would have guessed that he was would be the age at which I would say that he really could have not known. He really could have believed what he said before, and now he's at least telling the truth about what he believes at this point because of the information that's reached him. Now, of course, this does open up a question that women can ask him, that men can ask him too, that we don't appreciate when women ask us when we've become red pill aware, which is, who hurt you? And it may be that he got hurt. It may be that it was not him that got hurt, but that he saw someone else get hurt. Now, when I was in the United States a few weeks ago, talking with my son, I was telling my son about how my son has one thing that he recently stopped doing, I think, but there's one thing that I had to tell him is going to hold him back if he goes for job interviews. And that is simply that he'll go a long time without haircuts. He grooms it, he keeps it clean. But I said to him, look, you got to understand, you go a long time without these haircuts. And even if it's clean, somebody may not know how clean you're keeping it because of how long you let it get. So I told him that when it comes to that, and factor in, if you wear glasses and you read, that's going to drive women away. If you wear glasses and you read only as much as other people do, it'll drive women away, and that's
Yeah,
not
that's
necessarily
true.
your fault.
That
And
that's
what he
true.
said, and one of the things he said to me in response was, "Well, Dad, the thing is this: I'm not red pill aware because I don't ever get approached by them. I actually have been approached in middle school and high school. One of the things that made me red pill aware was that I saw them ignore some friends of mine that were better than me to come to me. And
Hmm.
the only difference would have been just we don't look like the same people.
Hmm.
Meaning, and he doesn't mean he look like he comes from a different origin. He means that just he and his friends don't look like they're related, so you can tell who's who by looking at them. That's any two people, you can tell two people apart. And so he said I watched them do that when I intentionally didn't behave at my best, and that's when I came to understand that something was wrong, that they were choosing men not just even though they might be bad, but when they're bad. because they're bad. That's when they would
and and
go
and
for these
and,
guys.
and that and that makes a good point. I think that's why women are drawn to young Pharaoh too, is because they know that he's like that he's when it comes down to it, when it comes really down to it, that young Pharaoh is just your typical nigga who uses big words. That's why women are drawn to that. You know what I mean? They're not
Okay.
necessarily they're not drawn to anything of like aggressive intelligence or anything like that. They're more drawn to the simple fact that um judging by his actions and things that he does, they're more drawn to that instead. Um, as I've said before, I've said this many times on my like videos or my live stream. A lot of the conscious women hate my guts because of the simple fact I stay on my squares and even in a few YouTube videos, I've shown like my library of all the books and stuff I'm reading because I actually do read. I take my reading very serious. You know what I mean? Um, and so as I do these things, this is actually a something that women do not like, you know, who run in the young Pharaoh audience. You know what I mean? It's looked at as boring, it's looked at as, oh, he's a loser, and things of that nature. Whereas and of course, like I spend my time gathering more resources for myself, especially, you know what I mean, being that I'm self-employed. And so what I learned, this is what I learned about the women in the conscious community. The women in the conscious community and the ones who run with him are really no different from women outside of the conscious community. The only difference is that they're kind of intrigued by doing the same thing, but just doing the same thing in a different way. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Like you can go to the hood, right? And everybody will know, okay, this woman's been around. This woman's been around. Everybody's had a turn. Versus in the conscious community, they just go to a third world country and do the same thing, right? One woman, as of right now, there's actually, yeah, one woman as of right now, um, she's literally been around every conscious person that we can name. She started with this guy named Yada. Then she went to this guy named I think it was like Prince York or something. Then she went to this guy named Nature Boy. Then she went to this back to the Prince York guy. Then she went back to Nature Boy. Then she went to this guy named TKO Capone. Then she went to this guy named she went to Umar Johnson. And then she went to this other guy now. And so in that process, though, she rode all of these carousels, but it was in the name of consciousness. It was in the name of being divine and things like that. So what I'm trying to get at is that the conscious community, they don't do anything different than what normal people do. They just do it um, using big words. And sometimes they just do it in these third world countries, but they're doing the exact same thing. You know what I mean? And so that's why it's like for someone who understands life and who has experienced life real close, you see through it. You know, you realize that it's no different from what goes on outside of the conscious community. You know what I mean? And and as you said, they are
Well,
enemies
this
of one another. Go ahead.
Well, in this case, I was mentioning what my son about because and you actually you explained inadvertently to the audience why you brought it up for him, not only because he caters to them, but because he is that cell block preacher. Now he may not have been to prison, I don't know, but he has the mindset of those
Nah,
who have
he
gone or
has been
wound
to
up and
prison.
such. Like,
No, he
okay,
not
all
to
right, that
cut you off.
explains.
Yeah, he has been to prison.
Okay, that explains everything right there. We're talking about. I hate to say it, but we're talking about a former Ray Ray, but not former enough, not ex Ray Ray enough. He still wanted to maintain some of the nigger swagger, and still project some of that niggerilla image that is necessary for men to get the draws on the streets. And so he's come out with that, and he couldn't leave it behind. He could not meet that Malcolm X standard of reform. He is the example of what MOT is completely 100% not only right, but necessary in order to preach. Now, I'm saying this considering that MOT might consider me an enemy because I don't have a grudge with BGS and those on BGS's side in general. But this is something about which, even if MOT hated me, I have to admit, and I don't know how he feels about me one way or another, but I have to admit this is an absolutely valid point. We have to get rid of this stuff. And even Xanatos Clutch, as much as I've told black men before, when you talk, if you talk like one of them, don't talk like that to us. If you want to talk like one of them to them, fine, you're code switching. But even with that disagreement and how I see things, I have to admit that's just an absolutely valid point. We have to drop this refusal we have to be so-called square and not street. We like to keep too many of us like to keep certain affectations, and what happens is that audiences will not validate you unless you come from this type of story. I was on the streets. I was a knucklehead. I was a no good ninja. I did X, Y, and Z. But then on the cell block, I became conscious. People want to take Malcolm X's story without actually making his sacrifice. Malcolm X left all of those affectations behind. He left behind the way they walked, the way they spoke. He kept the experience, but he never tried to validate or justify that form of lifestyle. Never did
Yeah,
that. And he
yeah.
actually did what today's crooks would look down on you for doing. He went into the library and read and became an articulate speaker. And when he came out, he didn't sound like part of the mayonnaise mafia, but he was
Hmm.
intelligent, he was articulate, he was
Hmm.
educated, he was self-taught, and he still
Hmm.
sounded like a black man. And
Hmm.
this is something that Young Pharaoh was an example of people refusing to do, but wanting to get that same glory. And so now he's coming to understand that the reason why he and others would not want to actually go that exact same route as Malcolm with that cultural exorcism, so to speak, that street culture exorcism, is because I don't know how to say it any nicer, but I want to use the B word, but I'm going to say it. The witch won't allow it. The witch won't validate it. And if you're not told anything different than when you're that age, their approval is going to be very important because you're not told anything different anyway. Naturally speaking, the other gender's validation will be important for a good reason, naturally. But we're in an unnatural situation. He wasn't told this. Now he's coming to understand to a certain extent that it's a con job and that they all have been in on it. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe 95%. You have some that are not, but nobody has sat back and pulled the wool from their eyes, except for maybe less than 10 women in the entire world have sat back and pulled the wool over there, or pulled the wool off of this and said, okay, this is the con game we've been running on these dudes. Red Film Diaries is one example of that. She's actually saying, no, this is how brutal we are. This is how we will judge you. This is why you should not take on a single mom with another man's kids. Because we'll sit up and say, well, this guy accepts that he's genetically inferior, so we lose respect. She said this, and
Hmm.
he's coming to understand the beginning. What he's understood is only the beginning. When he realizes how intentional this has been, and how more than 90% of them, maybe 95, are in on this and know what they're hiding from men. And the extent the extent to which they're going, the expenses which they'll pay to do this, just to make sure they have an unfair advantage they would never tolerate having themselves, or they would never tolerate us having over them, then he may actually. I mean, he already said you deal with him, you may have to kill him. That's because he hasn't been told what the other options are. He was not
Well,
told. See, he may think,
well,
well, when I
I
was down,
the
it was
thing,
when I was down bad, I was down river. It was a black woman putting money on my books.
yeah, and I think that's the whole
Go ahead,
thing.
I'm
Is
listening.
nah, I think that's the whole thing too. He brought the prison culture into the quote unquote conscious community, because of the simple fact that most of his content, in put it this way, I'm not the type of dude who really like pays too much attention to him, but it was just brought to my attention that, his baby mother said that he put hands on her and things like that, and what have you. So it was brought to my attention, but I never really was truly like into like just looking at him or something like that. But however, the thing is about the whole thing with especially with these conscious women, is they think they, they think because they're single mothers, but they're being called goddesses, and they're being called this, that, any other, that they're entitled to our resources, that they're entitled to basically a guy who's been on the square, and a guy who has built himself up, and a guy who has to face the world every single day in what he's doing. They feel entitled to that because people like Young Pharaoh and people like Brother Polite have enabled it. And unfortunately, Umar Johnson has enabled it as well too. And because of these enablers, um, they feel this way. And now, because of mishaps with the women that he thought were by his side, it now goes to the other extreme. And it's kind of bad because, and then I'm gonna let you talk. It's kind of bad because on one hand, you enable women, and you told them they were gods, they were goddesses. And on another hand, you're now back to your niggerisms. Your niggerisms have finally showed themselves. You know what I mean? Your full niggerisms have finally came out. Whereas people people didn't know they were there, but now they're finally for everybody to see. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, controversy sells. So it's unfortunate, but his platform may get bigger from these things. And believe it or not, he may get more toxic women coming his way too. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to tell you something, as you said before, a lot of these women actually like that. A lot of these women actually want to lie down with dudes like this. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to tell you something that happened. I'm going to tell you two stories that happened. One woman, she was in a conscious community, and she was with this guy, right? Over there doing bad stuff. Um, you know, it's just basically doing the whole conscious thing and everything like that. And she leaves that guy, right? And she pops up pregnant by another guy. And then the second woman did the same thing. She was in the conscious community, leaves, ends up pregnant by a sucker as well. And then there was one more that I'm gonna tell you about, and I feel sorry for this guy. She gets she gets she gets pregnant by a dude in the conscious community, the dude is not going to take care of the son because, or the daughter, because he doesn't have a pot to piss in because he's following orders from another like conscious Negro. He literally like follows everything he says. He doesn't have a mind of his own. So unfortunately, she gets a sucker who, you know, I saw the picture of them together, and you can tell this nigga's not happy, you know. And not only does she get a house from this Negro, but she gets like the keys, basically a keys to the car as well. And it's sad to see that this Negro forewent his resources to take care of another man's property, and he'll never fully have control over the kid due to the simple fact that, you know, she had the kid with a no good nigga, you know. And I called her out on it too, you know. I said, I even said, this nigga looks unhappy, you know what I mean? And of course, black women came from my head and talking about like, oh, my baby father took me on and I was a single mother. I said, good for you. That ain't gonna be the majority of young niggas who are on their square and who have resources that they work hard for, you know, because a lot of them know that they're better than that. You know, unfortunately, as men, we've been told that. We've been told that we're not good enough to get that we're not good enough to have a woman who has no kids. We've been told that we have to accept it. And so when you have these conscious dudes who are encouraging accepting it, it doesn't do us any favors. But go ahead and continue. My bad for being long-winded.
Well, I'm glad you are. As my dad would say, low and slow gets the job done. And if people are too much in a hurry to listen, then they need to get to a situation in which they have more time. So it's a reminder to me that I don't need to speak so quickly and raise my voice so much, even though I do it because I don't have the same, I have a sense of being rushed and time's not as abundant to me. Nonetheless, yours was a good reminder. Your pace was a reminder to me of some advice I got previously. He's come across the understanding some way or somehow, whether it happened to him, somebody around him, or some combination. He's come across this. Now, I'm not going to blame him for not being alpha enough to understand and not being alpha enough to not be surprised. I'm not going to hold that against him because what he does not know was intentionally kept from him, just like it's been kept from you, me, and any other man. And when we do know these things, the funny thing is that all these things that many of us do know, we didn't learn from ladies. I mean, ladies taught us inadvertently, not meaning to, but every time they chose what they wanted to tell us, it was something that was not true, and it was to their benefit for us to believe. And so he may have actually, because there was a time when I really thought that sisters were the most race loyal of all women. There was a time I thought, and this was me trying to be objective and not take anybody's word for it. There was a time I actually thought that the African-American woman and the Palestinian women were the most loyal to their men because of what their men were going through and how they had no record of leaving their men. I mean, Palestinian women are not known to go running after Israeli men. And they're really going through it right now. And then you take African-American men and what we've been through. We're not going through what the Palestinians are going through now, but we've been through a lot more if you add up the duration of what we've been through. And then you also add up the intensity from the past. In many parts of the continent, due to colonization, there were many groups of people that were, they really didn't have much direct contact with the colonizers. And then there are groups of people that had a whole lot of it because they were in the urban centers. So it depends on who your people were and how much contact you had with the colonizer if you're coming from the continent. And if you come from the Caribbean, you've had both. But I actually did think this. Many others really did And many today really do believe that sisters have been the most loyal to their men. And they're not making it up, they're not capping, they're not lying. They really think this because this is what they've been told, and they see sisters out there protesting and marching. There's a lot that he really would not have known. But the thing is that, in all honesty, he's going to have to come at some point to a realization. You said that he was one of these that bashes Islam, probably that it's not black enough and it's some Arab invaders religion and all that stuff. If that's the
Correct.
case, okay. If that's the case, let's say he had not bashed, but rather had been told the truth about how sufficiently black you can still be if you become a Muslim, and I mean an Orthodox Sunni Muslim, how much you're actually allowed to keep Arabs at arm's length because of their attitudes. As long as you don't blame the ones that are not guilty of it. Suppose he'd actually been told about this early on enough, and how Africans pretty much everywhere south of Sahara that became Muslim did so on their own without coercion and could not have been conquered to do so. Suppose he had been told about all of this, and he came to realize that the most unity between different groups of black people is under the umbrella of Islam. That's why you have I think that's why one of the Muslim rulers of Nigeria, not Muslim rule, not someone in charge of all of Nigeria, but he's in charge of a certain percentage of Muslims in Nigeria. And his mother-in-law is from Trinidad and Tobago. You see, that's not
Yeah,
Nigeria.
exactly.
That's not even in Africa.
Yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
just saying that if they came to understand how much black unity actually winds up just popping up as a side effect of black people that have accepted Islam, if he had come to this understanding early on, he would have saved himself a lot of time and grief and whatever headache he's going through now or watching a friend of his go through that led him to say the complete
Yeah,
opposite now, which is you got to kill them. He
yeah,
would have been
exactly.
told early on, you vet them, you have standards yourself because you're allowed to. You vet them,
Exactly.
and then you don't have to kill the bad ones because if enough of you did this, if enough men did this, they would be starved out anyway.
Exactly.
What he would have, we would have had to be dealing with a different problem along with him than what he was dealing with now. He would
Yeah.
have probably had to deal with some imams, some old imams that are still simps, and just
Hmm.
old Negroes that are still simps in the community, talking about, well,
Hmm.
you know, when nature, the man has to do all of this, and in nature, the male lion's got to
Hmm.
conquer, and he probably would have
Hmm.
had to deal with that type stuff. But
Hmm.
an idea that he does not get to have standards would not have been put on him like that. It wouldn't
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
not to that extent. And
Yeah.
so he really,
Yeah.
if he had taken, if he had known, and if he had just taken a different approach, he'd have saved himself a lot of time and headache.
Well, the problem is he doesn't read. That's the problem with all these conscious Negroes is that they don't read books and they don't the interest in things that you're talking about like that is not it is not at a high extent. You know what I mean? Like so and they don't go to people who may like be experts on certain things. I'll give you an example for me. I'll give you a prime example for me. Um, we're always told about and by the way, I may end up with a Somali or a Djibouti woman as my wife. Just a heads up as a side note. But anyhow,
Enough.
uh, but anyhow, um, so we were always told about like Somali pirates and things like that. And I'm like, well, what's the big idea? Like, what's really going on? I what's really going on behind that? So, lo and behold, there's a Somali restaurant, and I just asked the owner. I'm like, I'm not trying to get into politics, but are the Somali pirates just trying to protect their coastline, and they're not really pirates? They're just really trying to protect the coastline. He's like, you're right, because a lot of these boats do illegal fishing there, and a lot of these boats also dump toxic and nuclear material into the ocean. into their oceans, into their waters. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense then. So they don't tell the other side of the story. They just use that propaganda machine with the Tom Hanks movie and stuff like that. They leave out the other side of the story. But the moral of my point is I had to go ask someone who had more knowledge on the subject than I did. The average conscious Negro, what he'll do is he'll make something up, even if he doesn't have any knowledge of that subject. And so that is the same thing with the women situation. They're under this romanticism that um, having like black women as goddesses and putting them on a pedestal creates um, good stuff, but in reality, it creates more toxicity. And when someone calls them out on their BS, that person, such as myself, is looked at as a misogynist, is looked at as a sexist, is looked at as a woman hater, is looked at as who hurt you. But really, it's really that you just live life up close and you've seen what happens when you do drive a woman's delusion further and further even more, and you just are not standing for it. And so that's many of the times he has gotten at people who disagree with him or who have disagreed with him about his stance on the women as well. You know what I mean? But it's not just Islam he bashes. He bashes like everything. Like that's not in line with him. That's the one thing about the conscious people, be it Polite, be it Pharaoh, be it Shaka Bars, be it Nature Boy, be it Umar. Anything that doesn't line up with them, they're gonna bash it. You know, they want uniformity, right? But the problem is they don't have anything solid to be uniform about. You know, so that's the whole thing with him. And it's sad because of the simple fact that yeah, I'm just gonna end it on. I'm gonna leave it on this note, and then you can go ahead and chime in on this. The sad thing is the kids suffer. That a lot of times they, you know, especially here, um, cot carousels are usually rolled raw. And unfortunately, kids suffer from that because now they're growing up in an environment of dysfunction. So they see the dysfunction, and unfortunately, they repeat the cycle. So that's what makes me a little bit annoyed the most is not necessarily that the parents are doing the cycle, but that the kids are being involved in the cycle. And if the kids don't see anything different, they're going to end up repeating the cycle, you know?
Yeah, if they don't see anything other than that, then yeah, they won't have a way to break it because human beings are such that in order to break a cycle, you have to replace it, and that's fine as long as you're replacing it with a good one. And if he's been bashing religions in general, then at least I'm not going to take it too personally. The way, sorry for yawning, the way that I would if somebody were to zero in on us, single us out, and then insult any of the prophets, alayhum salam. God forbid that they do this. There are some people that do that.
Unfortunately, he did it. Unfortunately, he insulted Nailatu, alayhi salatu salam, but I just stayed quiet about it because I knew what was coming to him down the line.
Okay, well, there's a type of when people go to that point, then what I've noticed is that once people do this, something happens to them. Usually, the very least that I've seen happen to people when they do this is a loss of their intellect. I had to cut off a cousin because he did this. I don't even think he realizes that I cut him off yet. I woke up as I was getting ready to go back to the United States. Actually, I woke up and I saw what he posted. He insulted Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then I went immediately and immediately went unfriended him and then blocked him. My mother then told me that he had needed to be tested for a long time. She told me the way that he acted when they were sitting up with someone in the hospital. I think it was while his mom was in the hospital. He was sitting up and just trying to consistently draw attention to himself with jokes and trying to be smart with funny comments. And that she said, I wonder how he married who he married, because his wife is an excellent lady. Well, I mean, I had to cut him off, and many of us who are Muslim and we chose it for ourselves are going to come across this. In the conscious community now, this is something that seems to be growing. But the bare minimum that happens is a loss of intellect. And in his case, he went through this even beforehand. But it's been getting a little bit worse at this point because, I mean, more recently, he's come to the notion that there is no God at all. And he's been copying other people's arguments, but saying that he thought of them himself. And so I don't see people do this, and then they just go through life with nothing happening to them after that. So, I mean, what he's going through, he's done this before. Now, what he's going through, it may actually sound like a loss of intellect, not because he learned new information and grew, but because he didn't admit that he didn't know something from before. And that type of cognitive dissonance doesn't do the person who holds it any favors. So he's not even being easy enough on himself to say, well, I didn't know this before, and that's why I said it. But now I've come to understand, I mean, gods don't do this. He's not even giving himself that kind of break. But although I don't know much about him, I can't even, he's a name that I've heard Edward Allen Anderson mentioned several times before in a group. Despite the fact that I don't really know who he is and don't know much about him. What I can say about the entire conscious community in general is that they've become lost.
Well, here's the thing too. Here's the thing about it. And this is the other issue. When you look at people who have sainthood, you know, people who have waliyat, they're usually pure of face. Their faces look pure. There's usually a kind of aura about them that lights, that maybe they don't even have to say a word and you're drawn to them. I'll give you an example of what happened. Probably like in 2012, right?
Okay.
We had a commemoration of, because I belong to two brotherhoods. I belong to one called the Moradiya Brotherhood. And so what happened is we had a commemoration over the spiritual master, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, Rahmatullah alayh. So one of his descendants came to LA. The thing is about his descendant is he had an aura about him, and he didn't really have to say many words, but you were drawn to him. You were drawn to his presence. And I think the reason why you were drawn to his presence is because he was pure heart. So to this day, I think about that guy. And he didn't really have to say a lot of things for me to be drawn to him. He didn't use big words. He didn't have to say mitochondrial this, that, and the other. I'm getting at this because of, in piggybacking off of your point. When you do insult others, or when you do say something that like may have divine consequences, it also affects how you physically look as well. I'm not gonna lie to you, um, and this may be a little harsh, but young Pharaoh looks like a homeless person I would see in one of these homeless encampments um, in LA, jewelry and everything else. And the reason why I think he looks like that is because what you do spiritually can have an effect on you physically. And I think because, like, the thing is about these conscious Negroes, especially, is they're so self absorbed, right? They're so self absorbed that now they act like females and they don't have any bass in their voice because they do act so much like females because they're self absorbed like females. I think what has happened, this is why I think, and I know this sounds crazy, but I think because they did go with this ideology that the black woman is God and that the black woman is a goddess, they kind of unknowingly set themselves up to become black women or have the similar behavior of black women. And because the roles are reversed, sometimes the black woman is even stronger than them, you know. And so I think I don't know if they're doing this though. I really don't know if they know that they're promoting feminism. I don't know if they know they're promoting simping. What do you think? Do you think they know they're doing this, or do you think they're just going with the motions, knowing that monetary gain and notoriety is going to come with that? What do you think personally?
Again, I suspect that a lot of them start off not knowing, and that eventually they come to realize it. And then they either continue for monetary reasons if they're getting paid enough to do it, or they continue because they sympathize and they identify. I do think that many men who promote this sort of thing start off not realizing it, and then come to the realization later. Now, if a man's in his late 30s and he's not been rewarded by women, not just with validation, verbal validation, but if he has not been rewarded by women with them draws, then I think he knows that I think he knows it's cap. I think he knows that they're full of it. And so if he's still doing it, he's doing it because he doesn't believe he deserves a reward. He doesn't believe that he even deserves their respect, and let alone the commitment from any one of them, or the commitment from an attractive woman. He believes that it's something that's just owed in exchange for nothing at all, even if all of them friend zone him. So I suspect that that's what it is, because that's what I've been seeing with a lot of these men lately, that now they have to know. See, my last trip stateside, I was coming across men that were red pilled easily. My son, I found out 2 years ago that he was independently of me. It didn't have to do with me and my channel. And then his friends are. And I met one of his friends. I was just going, as a matter of fact, I was in one of the US airports, and I was about to fly out the country to come back here. And I stopped at one of the burger joints that does not exist here in the Middle East, but it's over there. And I thought, let me go ahead and get one of these chicken sandwiches. I'm not going to be able to get this particular type for a long time. I remember it was my last meal in the States. And when I was there and I placed the order, one of the airport workers was waiting on his order, and he looked at me, he said, "You sound very familiar." Since he didn't know my name, I asked him, well, do you listen to YouTube? He said, "I listen to it all day when I'm at work." I asked him, "Are you listening to RP content?" And he said, "I'm not sure what RP is." I said, well, let me ask you what you've heard about Kevin Samuels. And he started telling me stuff about Kevin's beefs that I didn't know about. So what I'm saying is that it was easy for me to just come across men who were red pill aware while in the States. It wasn't that difficult. Men that just understood what the games were, that it's rigged and they're not going to play it. That was easy. A few years ago, I would have never been able to come across men that knew this. And so I'm just saying that to say that these guys, now the information is so widespread that if you were promoting simping, you know cuss word well, that you were telling men to abase themselves, and to idolize not just mediocre, but below mediocre, subpar, negative quality women and their drawers in exchange for not even them drawers, but in exchange for pretty much nothing, really. That's You have to know this at this point because there are too many men that are going to come out and tell you this. I mean, Kevin Samuels was one example. To us, he was a simp before he started going in on these ladies. He was going in on men. He was going in on only men. He was blaming men for things that they did not know, as if they should have somehow known that their own female relatives lied to them, let alone that their mothers were lying to them all their lives. Like they were supposed to just know that everything your mom said was a damn lie. He was going in on men for this. We were going in on him about this type of stuff. When you gonna say something about these women and what they're asking for and what they refuse to offer in exchange? You going in on guys. You know what, man? Watch what these women look at them and see what they're demanding, and you'll see why it is that fatso who was only making 1,800 a month had every right to call in Kevin and ask what's wrong with these broads. The one that Kevin asked his junk size. Well, you know, Kevin went on this dude like he's supposed to know that the TV lied to him. This is Kevin Samuels. He's bringing our message to the mainstream, and that's good, and I'm gonna support him in that regard. But what I'm saying is that he knew. He just decided, okay, well, let me hear what they're talking about. Let me ask these ladies what they want and what they're not going to offer in exchange. And then he said, oh my God, you all really want too much in exchange for too little. Wait a minute, hold up. So you cheated on a boyfriend multiple times. He cheated once. You couldn't handle it, so you went and cheated and intentionally got pregnant with his cousin. You're a low down human being. He had to get to that point. He started off with the usual, you men need to straight up, you men need to rise to this. And men got on him and told him, and he understood. So I know these other men are coming to this understanding. It's just a question of how long it takes them. A guy that's, fresh out of his mom's apartment, fresh out of his mom's house, a young adult, he may really not know. But it's not going to take him a full 3 years at this point for him to figure it out. Someone's going to tell him. That's my answer. What you think? So you think they just never know this,
well, the thing is, here's the thing that separates the conscious simp from the regular simp. The regular simp will spend the resources to get maybe like a little bit, to get a little bit of whatever. They may spend the resources to get a little bit of something, probably even pity sex once in a while. The conscious Negro, however, he's able, because of his platform and because of, unfortunately, other men, mostly it has to do with other men, push and pump him up. He's able to get, still simp, but he's able to get maybe more, like more butt than the average simp because of his platform and because of his little celebrity that he has going on. So a part of me says that I think knowingly these people are doing it because it works for them due to the simple fact that they have a bigger platform than other people. So I think knowingly they do this. You know what I mean? That's just what I believe personally about the whole conscious people pushing the whole Black woman's God and stuff like that. I think they know what they're doing, but I think at the same time they don't love their brothers, because otherwise they would tell their brothers otherwise, not to do, like not to simp, but they never did tell them. In fact, they told us that we're misogynists and that we hate black women and that we hate women in general. That's the whole problem. It's funny. It's funny because I was in I was in because I have a lot of Sudanese friends. Sudanese people are very cool, very genuine people for the most part. So when the problems were going on in Sudan, they invited me to a rally, you know, and so I said, you know what, I'm gonna go support them. I'm gonna go support my Sudanese partners. So I went to the rally. Believe it or not, I saw one of the conscious Negroes at the rally, and it wasn't because he was actually supporting the cause. It was because he was looking for new tail. May Allah forgive me, but I was about to take flight on him. I mean, I was really about to run over there and whoop his ass, because I know what he does. But my friend held me back. He's like, "Nah, don't do that. Don't do that." So I think that a part of them knowingly does it because it works for them. And they don't, again, it comes back to the sincerity factor. I don't think they care about anybody else but themselves. They don't want to see anybody else win. That's why I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you one more example. I have a friend, you know, I'm, I, and I'm not the type of dude to pump my, pump my chest out. I don't do that. I'm not really into doing that. But I have a friend who came here, um, and his parent, like his dad is the Saudi ambassador. He's a Saudi Arabian ambassador. So, he invites me over and he, and I say, yeah, cool. I come over, chill or whatever the case may be. So his dad says, hey, you can drive my car, you know, mind you, they live somewhere in Beverly Hills. It's like anybody my son brings over, I'm pretty sure he has a good moral character. So I get to drive the car. The car is a Wraith. Like a Rolls Royce. I get to drive it around and stuff like that. I didn't post any pictures on social media or anything like that, but I stopped at a gas station and this one conscious dude said, oh, all you want to do is live a European lifestyle. All you want to do is live like the European lives. You're nothing but a coon. And he just came out of nowhere and said these things. And I said, okay, thank you. You know, but then deep down inside, I did a test. I did a trick. And I said, hey, bro, you want to take a ride somewhere? His whole mood changed. And I said, no, I was just effing with you. I just wanted you to show your true colors. So I say this to say that if you build up your resources, if you do what you need to do, the conscious person, rather than like to see you win, will be more or less envious of you winning because it's not them. That's the whole thing. That's what I learned about these conscious people is that they don't want to see black men win as a whole. That's my problem. They don't want to see black people win as a whole, especially black men win as a whole. They only want to win. That's what that's the impression I get from, and that's the problem I have.
Okay, well, in a nutshell, that's very fair. Now, to make sure I understood the order correctly, somebody was saying this to you about you being a coon, and then you asked him if you want to take a ride somewhere, and he decided no. Is that
No,
right?
Nah, his whole mood changed. His whole mood changed. His
Okay.
whole
And
his whole mood changed, and the mood was, yeah, let's go, let's roll, right? And so
mhm.
I said, but then I said, I'm just effing with you, man. I just wanted you to show your true colors. You know,
Okay.
that's what
You
I did.
wanted, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately unfortunately for us, this is part of the propaganda that's been levied against us overall. What the conscious community has been taught to believe about us. And I understand that Chancellor Williams had a lot to do with it. I get that. But when I think about it, I know that there have been some guys that have already rebutted what Chancellor Williams looked at, the sources that he looked at. And so it'll be hard to know exactly which parts are true and which parts are not, because he went through colonial records. He went through the records of the French. And they had an interest in lying. The British did too. They've been caught lying about the uses of certain locations and even the dates of certain locations. And so consequently, we've really been led to believe a lot of this stuff. Many of us have actually, many of us actually don't think that these are lies. We really, many Muslims who are black have been lied to about what others have done. And about the thing is that the truth is enough to really indict many other ethnic groups next to whom we pray in the masajid. The truth alone is enough to indict them. Their modern day
True.
attitudes are enough. So we don't really have to go looking for extra historical records that might be lies. Some of them are going to be very true. They're the things that they themselves wrote or that their ancestors themselves wrote that were inadvertent confessions. We could go with these. But this idea that black people are facing some kind of threat from the Muslim world, most of which is black itself anyway, is it's outright insane when you compare it to the truth. But many actually believe this, and I guess he's one of those that fell victim to that. But there are many of them that actually do fall victim to this. So what winds up happening is that they're missing the medicines. And they're missing certain things that actually do work. As I mentioned, if you really want black unity, you can't expect to have that under Ma'at, because for one, ancient Egypt is not really an ancestral ground to many of us in a direct fashion. If you are of Dogon ancestry, then yes, it is, because the Dogon are descendants of ancient Egypt. That's true.
Yeah.
There may be some other groups that were as well,
Yeah.
but for the most part, we come from Western Central Africa. The Dogon migrated to West Africa a long time ago. What's now
Yeah.
what we now call West Africa.
Yeah.
They migrated from ancient Kemet, but that's a one-off. And so even these folks that are cynic of trying to use black consciousness in order to downplay what's been a medicine for black people have missed something very important. And that is that Ma'at is one set of beliefs. It's one group of beliefs. And Ma'at did not extend to warfare. So it was a good moral code up until you start to practice warfare. And then all of a
Exactly.
sudden they would throw it out the window. So they weren't defeated because they were morally superior and they weren't willing to do certain things and commit certain acts of barbarity. They were defeated because the weapons they hadn't come up with yet, they were overrun, and they still pushed the Hyksos out later on.
Yeah.
So it was more like maybe they were just caught by surprise and then they regrouped and kicked out the Hyksos. So the Hyksos didn't really stay in power permanently. And so a lot of historical inaccuracies have to be taken on in order to believe the platform that young Pharaoh had, and that others like him have had. And
Yeah.
so if you talk about historical inaccuracies, then how the hell do you know how these Africans of back in the day, today, whom are very patriarchal, as you know firsthand better than I do, how did they come up with this idea that in the motherland everything was matriarchal and that men didn't even exist before 5,000 years ago? Yeah, you got some that say stuff like that. That the male
Yeah.
gender is less than 5,000 years old, and that before that it was all women, and they were having kids by themselves. If that was sufficient, then then a species that's one gender would not evolve another gender if one gender was sufficient enough for them to be able to reproduce asexually. And so they can't really justify with history or with logic or basic biology what it is that they believe in. What this means is we have to look at what the other motives are. Now, what is a motive that many of these people would share that they don't even have to really talk about? They don't have to sit up and discuss what this motive is, but they share it. That would motivate them to start to bash a way of life that has been medicinal for Black people when they've taken it on throughout history. And what that is this: in the end, Fuller, they may really believe a lot of these historical inaccuracies about what so and so did and how everybody treats us once they find that we're darker than they are. And some of these things would actually not even be inaccuracies, but true. But the reason why they're so against anything in the way of monotheism is really because it means put down the alcohol, put down the blunt, put down the cigarette, put down the weed, stop chasing tail, quit fornicating. It really means live a disciplined lifestyle. Oh, and by the way, get up early in the morning before the sun comes up for the first prayer and say the other four at their times too. It's the discipline that's required, the self-discipline.
Well,
Not even.
and that's a good point, because I'm going to tell you something else too that gets on my nerves about the conscious community. This is what really bugs me. And to and not just the conscious community, just to the world in general. The conscious community pushes like nudity pretty heavy. Like, before the white man came, we didn't have clothes on or anything like that. And so we just like walked around with no clothes on. That bugs me because of the simple fact it shows that you're nothing more than a wild beast and that you're pretty primitive. And it defeats the whole point of what we call like evolution. We evolve in life, you know what I mean? And so I think as human beings, we have evolved into like wearing clothes. And so what happens is, there's probably like less than 7% of African tribes who walk around with nothing on. It's not really a common thing as they make it out to be. And that's the one thing I dislike too, because now you're pushing a culture of fetishism. You're pushing like a fetish type thing. And I'm not really cool with that. You know what I mean? I'm not really cool with that. And it goes back to your point of discipline. Like if you do that, and if you're pushing that, it's like you really don't have any discipline. You know what I mean? You don't really have any and back to your point of discipline, what we're talking about right now is discipline goes hand in hand with accountability. So for example, with the Young Pharoh situation, he won't take accountability. He'll be like, basically, oh man, you can't mess with these women, man. You may need to kill the women, man. Instead of saying, I take responsibility from my ideology that helped produce this kind of woman. If she is indeed lying on him or whatever the case may be. I don't know the full story. I've just seen clips of her like crying in the car and things like that. But I don't know the full scope of the story. But again, it just shows that he won't take responsibility for the things that he created. Like that's the thing. If when a like say when one of these conscious Negroes fall out with their women or whatever the case may be, they won't take accountability for what they were saying that led to the women acting the certain way that they acted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. We men, in order to miss this, we had to really miss a lot. And I think we missed a lot by not having a few generations of men with us under these roofs and having full power to tell us whatever the hell it is they wanted to tell us as fathers would tell their sons. And this is part of why it is that he went down that path in the first place. I mean, he preached this for a long time. He probably really believed it, especially considering the sudden way in which he changed on right now. But he hasn't yet said what his reason is. See, in order for us to sit up and say that they're goddesses, really, in order for us to continue to uphold them, short of calling them goddesses, just to uphold them, when it is their standards that have driven the community further back than what white supremacists by themselves did. They did their job, don't get me wrong. But when you add on the extra weight and baggage we have, the culture war, that's on the sisters oftentimes. And when you uphold them like this, that's because you have to have been taught at a young age that they're intrinsically worth more than you are. And that's exactly what we've all been taught that at some point. If you were African American growing up, this is something that at some point was passed down to you. And looking back, I realized you were kind of lucky if some of the old pimps in the neighborhood said, "Man, they just turning tricks, or they don't really amount to much." You're actually somewhat lucky in that you didn't hold them up on a pedestal, and you could have a normal relationship with many of them later on. But there's a blindness that's been programmed into us men, so that we'll look at them and say, "Well, yeah, they're goddesses, and everything they do wrong is because of the trauma that we were put through, and or it's because of something that we've done wrong." But they never just do wrong on their own because they're human, but we do. He's been, I guess something happened that shook him off of that. But we're going to have to turn around and use him as a poster boy, the same way he went in on religion in general. We're going to have to turn around and use him in order to spread a particular truth. Now, I don't know how to use it to propagate our religion per se, and I'm not sure I want to use him for that purpose anyway. But to propagate what we know about the gender war, certainly we should go ahead and utilize that. And I say that because we have a situation right now in which we have a lot of young Muslim guys that have to be led straight because they've been led astray in many Western Muslim communities, and sometimes even Eastern ones. They've been led astray by feminism, and they've been told certain things, and they've been told about the rights of the women, but not the rights of the men. They've been told about the responsibilities of the men, but not of the women. And they've been told that men have been shirking their responsibilities, and they've not really been upholding their end of the bargain. And that's the kind of thing that a lot of young Muslim men are being taught now. So they're coming into this with a sense of guilt, and they start off their search for marriage feeling like they got to prove something, which is holding them back. We already know a lot of young Muslim women are exploiting this, especially if they were raised in the West. My own father knows about this now. He ain't even Muslim, but he knows about this now. He asked me and I told him. And he said, "Well, I know of one case that'll back up what you're saying." And he was talking about a situation I went through, but we didn't go too deep into that. But the thing I'm saying is that now, because of that, we have young Muslim men that are going through a lot of this brainwashing. And so we can use the case of this young Pharaoh, and we can point to the young Muslim men, and we can say, "Okay, look, he used to bash Islam, he used to say X, Y, and Z. Now he's at least been proven wrong. Either he was bitten or someone he knows was bitten, or both. But he was proven wrong about what he used to say regarding this. So we got to start telling young Muslim brothers that when it comes to this half of their deen, they're going to have to start looking at channels like yours and like Mahdi Tijani and Abu American. They're going to have to start looking at these channels and coming to understand it's not about oppressing her, but it is about not being oppressed by her. And then if
Yeah.
you let her do it, even when she's wearing the hijab and the niqab and the jilbab and a nigga named Rob, even when she's got all of this and she's praying
Mm-hmm.
5 days, 5 times a day, and maybe even
Mm-hmm.
extra, and peppering her English with so much Arabic you don't know which language she's going to speak next. Even when it comes to that, if she was raised in the West, she's been
Mm-hmm.
taught how to do it. She's been taught
Yes.
how to play certain games. And when it
Yes.
comes down to it, she'll do it if she can. If she sees the advantage in doing it, she'll take that advantage. And that's why
Yes.
young Muslim brothers got to understand they got to watch these channels, and young Pharaoh can be used
Mm-hmm.
in order to say, okay, well, look what he stood on. It's shaky. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here's the alternative, or look at what I'm telling you is the alternative, and at least scrutinize it for yourself, and see if it actually is. See if I was lying. But we already agreed that this guy over here is on shaky ground, and that he's going through a
Mm-hmm.
shock right now because of something that happened
Mm-hmm.
and woke him up. You want to bypass that, young brother? Okay, well, here are the channels. You can at least look at them and see, and then you determine from there. And when they start
Sure.
listening to these guys, I'm sorry, are you getting a Telegram call now?
No, I'm not getting a call. I'm not getting a call
Okay, all right, then I can hear a notification like I'm getting one, but I'm not getting one on my
on your
let me
end.
see. Yeah, I'm not getting one. I can just hear the I can hear that sound of that notification. So anyway,
Well,
maybe
I have
all
a
I can do is
question.
yes,
I
sir.
have a question for you. That
Yes, sir.
and this is kind of like segueing segueing away from the topic, but it still has to do with the topic. I've
Yes,
been
sir.
seeing something. I've been seeing a trend. Okay, I've been seeing like a big time trend. You know, Holly Berry, well around 50s, and she's single, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another singer, Carrie Hilson, like I think she's in her 40s, single. Um, Maya, at one time everybody liked Maya, 40 something, single. This one, I think she video model, Vita Guerra, saying hi to 50, single. Um, Melissa Ford, another video model, I think said hi to 40 already, single. Now, granted, these women you would think would have their pick at the creme de la creme because of the industry that they are in. Do you think that the tide is changing to a certain extent that now guys are like, well, we don't even give a care about if they were popular amongst in entertainment. We don't give a rat's ass about that. The bottom line is, they're way over the hill, and why would we want to mess with them, regardless of their title? Um, do you think that's the tide that is happening right now? Like, because I'm actually kind of confused why they would still be single. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
It's a combination of hypergamy and the way that they are in the West. If you were going to ask me, my guess would be that it's hypergamy and the way they are in the West. They're already famous. The Western women are famous, so they already feel that they're not supposed to submit to anybody. Then on top of that, they're also wealthy, generally speaking. So very few men in the population have enough money to be with them, and they're not going to. For the most part, we have to remember that women in general can be conceited even when they're not Western. You add in Westernization, and if they're the least bit cute, they are conceited. If they're the least bit educated, they're conceited. If they make money, they're conceited. If they're famous, they're conceited. If you combine these things, then when it comes to men, they're going to be very, very, very conceited. And so as they get older, I mean, they still don't want men younger than them for the most part, because that's not hypergamy, that's hypogamy. But they might be able to overlook that. You take all the other things; they're even more difficult to overlook. Men making less. The men that will commit to them are going to be the men that have less than they do. Men that maybe they're younger, maybe they're older, but the men certainly are going to have less money than they are, be less famous than they are. Yeah, generally it's going to be that. So those are going to be the men that will commit. I don't have anything. I don't know of what I would have to lose by marrying someone like Holly Berry outside of sanity, but that's because I know how she is. But if I didn't know this about her, and then I was out somewhere and she saw me, took an interest, and we had a romance, then I really would not know what I would have to lose by being with her. Nick Cannon didn't know what he had to lose by being with Mariah Carey, just as an example. So I'm just saying that to say that it has to do with the tide of men. I mean, there are more men that are coming to understand these things, but there are also men that would say, yeah, well, I mean, she makes a lot more than I do, so it's not like I'm going to lose much. And if it doesn't work out, I'm out the door. I'm not going to be the one that gets hit up for alimony because I didn't make as much. But see, these women know that. They know that they're not the ones who stand to gain in the event of a divorce. It's the men. And that's why a lot of them won't necessarily be with anyone anyway. The men they want won't be with them because they know it's not going to work. And these women will try to take advantage and take alimony. They know this. So, I mean, Vivica Fox, she divorced that man after a year and a half because she was paying for stuff. But I don't think that will qualify him for alimony either. I mean, it probably does not qualify. That time they were married doesn't qualify him. And she said it. It didn't have to do with him cheating or anything else. She got tired of paying for stuff. And that's just something they really can't tolerate. They can only tolerate that when they're not the ones that have to earn the money. Now, if there's another man taking care of them, then they don't mind spending money on another man. But if they have to work for that money, Holly Berry had to work for that. She had to act for that money. She had to play those roles on camera for that money. If that's what they had to do, they're not going to take money they had to work for and they had to spend and turn around and spend it on men consistently, or even sometimes without a resentment. That's just not how they are. They hate that. So it's really just a combination of the conceit that comes with westernization on top of the natural hypergamy that they have, if you were to ask me. And then you have men that are saying, no, I'm not going to be with her. I'm not going to be with someone like this. And if I have options, if I'm the guy she would want anyway, that means I have options. I mean, look, she wants me. Definitely other women want me. I want to get with someone that hasn't said hello to 30, ain't carrying any other man's burdens, be it babies or a disease, or just even the imprint. These men that these women want have really they have really more options than most men.
And that's another thing too. And not to cut you off, that's another thing that Young Pharoh and Brother Polite were pushing. We all have our situations. We all have like challenges we have to deal with in life. However, it's our choice to either get better from those challenges or get worse from those challenges. So what Young Pharoh was pushing was, and Brother Polite was pushing, it's basically being a Captain Sava woman to damaged women that obviously they've been through the point of no return. That's the one thing that they were pushing. A woman in the harsh facts is that a woman and people in general cannot change unless they want to change, unless they make a focused effort to change. So Young Pharoh in essence was pushing to like basically do the groundwork to change a woman when you really can't do that. You really can't change a woman who doesn't want to change. You know what I mean?
He was trying to make a 304 into a housewife.
Exactly. And it just doesn't happen. I'm sorry to say it, but a lot of conscious women as I've said before in the beginning of the live chat, a lot of them have written a lot of cock carousels. I said I wasn't going to say any names, but I'm just going to say two names in particular. One woman, her name is Velvet Marquez, um, and she wrote one cock carousel. There was this one cult leader. She decided to write his cock carousel. And then there was another guy. She wrote his cock carousel. Now she's pregnant, two different baby fathers. Now all of a sudden she's found Jesus, according to her. And then there's the other one that I was talking about early. Her name is Natiri. What happened with her is she went to one guy, wrote that cock carousel, went to another guy, wrote that cock carousel. And I think maybe, let me see, um, one, two, three, four, and four more other cock carousels within that guy's camp that she went to. She leaves that guy's camp, um, goes ahead and write um, another cock carousel, returns to that guy's camp, writes the cock carousel again, leaves that guy's camp, and rides Umar Johnson's cock carousel. Now, fast forward, she's with another guy to ride another cock carousel. But this is all in the name of consciousness. Then there's another woman, um, the one I was telling you about earlier. Um, she rode two guys' cock carousels in one camp, ended up getting pregnant by one of them. And again, I told you that now the guy that she is with has foregone his resources to be with her and, take on the burdens of dealing with a single mother, you know. And believe it or not, as crazy as this sounds, I'm under the impression that she's still getting her back blown out by Daquan up the street, you know. And so that's what a lot of them do. A lot of them do this, and they uh, they think it's okay to do it. They think that that's the problem with the conscious community, is that they feel that they can have their cake and eat it too, and do the exact same things that are destroying different communities. You know, all 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 and it's sad for me to say this, but I'm just gonna say it. I don't deal with conscious women at all. Like I don't really deal with a lot of women at all, because I know what I want, and I know what conditions it's gonna take for me to get what I want, so I'm just working, leveling up so I can be at the conditions where everything's in a good situation. Now, what I'm going to say is that, without being too long-winded, is that every conscious girl that I've known or I've come across has written a cock carousel and still kept the peace king facade, but having a big rap sheet. You know what I mean? Like having a huge rap sheet. Every single last one of them women I know of, you know. And so I'm wondering, have you heard stories about that yourself?
I began to hear about it here in the manosphere, to be honest. I didn't hear about too much of that, or too many of them being that loose, when I was more involved in the conscious community, or when I tried to be more involved. Truth be told, back then, they would have put up a front, a very good front. And I would have had no way of knowing that they were lying. And I was the kind of guy for whom they would put up the most front because I looked naive. So therefore, they would do what they could to keep a guy like me naive. So I did a very good job of keeping it from me, making sure that I wouldn't have known anything about anything like that they would have hidden anything along those lines. So I really didn't know how bad it was until let's see, yeah, I didn't know about it until I started hearing about it in 2019, and even then, I wasn't really sure how true it was. I mean, was it really that bad, or were people just making this up because that's what it seems like, because that's what it sounds like? And it turned out that no, for the most part, this is really going on. This is what was really happening, and that I think I really saw how bad it was when some of the guys were saying it was bad, and then they were showing screenshots of white guys in chat saying, "Look, these ladies that are teaching that are talking all this Black Power stuff to you all are really giving it up to us for free. Like we don't have to hardly do anything. They're just making it easy. And you guys should really be insulted by this. You can't protect them because they're willingly leaving you all. But before, no, man, for years the wool was pulled over very well. I didn't know that they were the ones that, because they talked like they were the ones that they were the last ones that would get out there and do something wild like that. So no, they really did a good job of hiding it, if I'm honest about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. Menelec, salute. What's up? Any words or?
Yeah, I just chimed in or something like that. I was mentioning like mine, so he just told me that he was on here. So this is my first time ever in
Oh,
being on
welcome, welcome, welcome,
being on the
welcome.
yeah channel. Thank you, huh? Thank you. Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a son of Galileo, huh? Thank you, and Amharic, huh? Amharic, huh?
I'm
Yeah,
sick of Nalo.
yeah. Um, yeah, I think
Do
that
you want to chime in? Do you want to chime in and
yeah, because
like give some
I
thoughts?
think the topic was like, is the topic is the like the Black conscious community or something. That's what the topic is.
Yeah, well, let me give you a little
States.
quick run through. Well, one of the main, I guess you can say, celebrities of the Black conscious community, one who was the spokesperson for the Black woman is God. I think yesterday he ended up, I don't know how true it is, but this is just based on the video that she put. Um, she he ended up putting hands on his baby mother, and then he makes another video saying that you know don't deal with women, um black women, because you'll end up having to uh maybe end up hurting or killing them. So I was just kind of like talking about the double standards and just how like all of these conscious people are frauds. So if you want to chime
Yeah.
in and
Yeah. What's the other guy, the popular one, trying to think his name,
Brother
his
Polite,
name, the bro- that dude, that young Pharoah,
your thing is kind of breaking up.
oh, my bad, sorry, that, my connection must be getting bad.
Yeah.
Okay, Menelik, can you hear us now?
Guys, he said I'm breaking up. Huh? That's what you were saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
now I
All
can
right,
hear
yeah, I
you.
can hear you now.
I was saying that polite or young Pharaoh.
Yeah, both of them basically. But young Pharaoh is the one who put hands on his baby mother.
Yeah, yeah. I think those guys are like, you're right. They're like, mm, I think they're like, snake salesmen. So I think that they're snake salesmen, and I think those guys, and you talking about, oh, you shouldn't deal with black women, and a lot of those guys, they're just you know, there a lot of them are just fake. They just like kind of just selling like we call it this, a fake, dream with
Snake
all
oil.
this black. Hello,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still
Do you
listening.
mean
Still listening.
you hear me?
Yeah.
off and on? Yes.
Yeah, off and on. Yeah, yeah. A lot of those guys, those hoteps dudes, and they're not really for real, huh? But like people like search for Yuru, who's real, like really Pan African, who really is trying to show people different things and stuff like that, a different way. Those are guys. At least they have some. At least they have some type of legitimacy of what they're talking about. And I think a lot of those guys in the conscious communities, they don't even know any continental Africans, or they don't have know any people. They haven't even been to the continent, or so yeah. So a lot of those guys are not really, they ain't really real, huh, in my opinion.
Well, would you agree? I'm just going to ask you this question. Would you agree that in the conscious community, that most of them just bring their niggerisms into it and just like make it into something where they can have their cake and eat it too? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they bring like a hood, that hood culture, in the community. And I think that like a lot of those sisters, they even get into it, like either they chose like bad dudes or thugs or something, and then all of sudden now they're like this black conscience warrior queen and all that type of stuff. That's why I've noticed um from them. And it's what it seems to me. It almost seems like they're just trying to hustle, do a lot of hustling. And I think it's not really it's kind of basically just like kind of a show, a character, a characterization to me, a little bit, to a certain extent, to me, huh?
Now, what, okay, those are good points. Now, would you say that from your interactions, like with the conscious community and from you, like talking with them and, engaging with them, would you say that there's nothing really different among them in terms of like toxicity when it comes to the consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would agree. And like most of them that I interacted with it, like I haven't really interacted with a lot of them. Maybe just maybe one or two times in person, but the interactions I've had with them like online and stuff like that, that's why I've noticed that like some of those guys still kind of have some street mentality, and like they're not really like yeah, you're right. It's not like they're bringing like real traditional like African values, or like you were saying, like they do like like a fake polygamy type of thing. So it's kind of like, is in the sense that like they don't really like understand like polygamy, or is in a sense that like in the African way, and like even in Africa, it's like there's only like a small percentage that do it, like maybe back in the older generation, because a lot of them, because you got to have like a lot of money or something like that, usually
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
having that type of stuff, and it's usually done in the marriage, and in that way. But trying to do it here in the West, and that's problematic because the culture is not really set up for that. Huh? Shoot, even the women are not even set up to even get
Exactly.
married,
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna
married
let you know
single.
something. I'm gonna
Yeah,
let you
yeah.
know something. I'm gonna let you know something about that. Um, there was actually a time when I yeah, I told Black Mind this. One of the one a Saudi ambassador was his son was was someone I met up with that I met here in Los Angeles. Um, he I came across one time I was at the gas station. I came across his mom, you know, and she was driving a sports car. She was driving an exotic car, foreign car. And she just said, straight out said, "Yeah, I'm the second wife." And it goes back to your point because if you're trying to set up polygamy in the West and do it in a structured, orderly way, what the first wife has, the second wife has to have too. So if your first wife is driving around in something big, something um sporty, then your second wife has to have it too if she wants it. That's her right. She's entitled to it, you know. So you would have to have a lot of money in the West to set up polygamy the right way, you know. So that goes back to your point that they're not even doing polygamy in the right way or setting it up in the right way.
Yeah, yeah, because they have these like pseudo, could call it what do you call it? Like it's not polygamy, but poly- I think they say in the West where we're just multiple relationships, but something like that. So it's like a lot of them, shoot, a lot of Western women, I guess in the states can't even just do monogamy, just a regular monogamy marriage or something like that. So how the heck they gonna be in no polygamy? So it's so
Yeah, exactly.
so it's
You
gotten
know
that.
what? Not to cut you off, but that's a very good point. A lot of these Western women don't even know how to be a girlfriend anymore. A lot of these Western women don't even know how to be a wife. So how are you going to have multiple wives?
Yeah, because the culture has gotten it's gotten so bad that yeah, they can't even do that. It's like they don't have the femininity even for it and stuff like that. They just know how to just put on the sex appeal and that's it, but they have like, it's empty vessel. Like it's just like a woman without any type of femininity and they're bringing this masculine energy. It's almost like, what's the point? Huh? So it's kind of like, it's gotten to that bad. So there's no even courting. So even when it came to even like traditional stuff that was known back in like the 50s or like long time ago, they can't. They don't even do that. People don't even do. That's not even courting, romance, or you can't meet the parents or any of that. So now it's just like smash, 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 and the Instagram you in the era of Instagram models. So you have a lot of women that have a lot of ego and a lot of them are narcissistic and it's about control. So yeah, a lot of them are not even good to be around. So yeah, so and I don't know how they're gonna I don't because like a lot of black people in America don't even have control of the culture. So the culture has to be set up right and structure there, but a lot of them are not getting that. So and like people are not even getting married like they used to either. So it's like respect for marriage. Like so I think that like in
Yeah,
the African way, like when you marry somebody, right? You marry into the family. It's just not two individuals marrying this and stuff like that. That
yeah,
whole
yeah, yeah,
structure have been
definitely.
destroyed.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's like with me, you know, I there may be a strong possibility that I marry into like Somalian family, a Djiboutian family, or Eritrean family. So I'm just preparing myself for that scenario by even learning a little bit of the language right now. You know what I mean? Because that way it'll make things a little bit easier. You know what I mean? But back to your point, um, I was going to say something about that the Western model of what we have going on and not being in control of the culture. Um, I think a lot of times with these conscious Negroes is they, I said this earlier, I think it's a matter of them getting their rocks off and that's just it. You know what I mean? I don't think that there's a like end all result for, you know, what they're trying to do and things like that. And because they don't give order to their women and things of that nature, you know, the women is allowed to become more delusional, you know, and be told she's this and be told that she's that. I'll give you a perfect example. Um, a lot of the times they try to push these vegan diets and stuff like that, but you know, in Africa, like nearly all ethnic groups eat meat, you know. So if nearly all ethnic groups eat meat, how are you going to push a vegan diet, you know, when we didn't even eat when we weren't even vegans, you know what I mean? And so that it's just kind of weird,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's like a pseudo type of like African type values there that like they're trying to do is like it's almost in a sense that like they're trying to it's like kind of like a new age type of thing they trying to like do it. They try to borrow things from certain
Yeah,
types of things and make something out of that. So it's kind of like yeah. So it's strange in some ways. So it's almost in a sense like okay if you want to live like that and like you said it's it's more about just getting their rocks off. It's not about trying to build a family or build some type of legacy. So because you have a culture that's kind of like it's like a pimp, like a pimp, whole type of culture, pimp
yeah,
prostitute type of culture. And then so yeah, it's all messed up. So yeah, a lot of them, a lot of them themselves, um, if they go to like to a traditional culture, a lot of some of those guys probably wouldn't even like these conscious guys wouldn't even know how to adapt to that. Huh? Like a lot of
yeah,
them
it's
would be
true.
like,
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. Another thing that they do, this is another thing that they do. You know, I'm just gonna be real, and it's gonna be harsh, but you know, especially in minority communities, a lot women are morbidly obese, and so they think the answer to that is being naked and saying this is body positivity. A lot of times, unfortunately, these black conscious people take a book right out of um, someone else's story that doesn't belong in theirs, and they think that walking around naked is body body positivity. But what it really is it's pretty gross. I'm just being real. Like that's just gross. Like I mean, I don't know why you think that's promoting a positive body. Shit's gross.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
it
you're
is,
not.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you're.
and like yeah, you're right. And like even if you go to Africa, like a lot of those like dudes dudes in the motherland, they're a lot more critical than um the African diaspora or something like that, in these Western like countries or something like that. And like with the women, like the obese women or a certain type of women there, they're more critical of the women there than we are when it comes to certain things like that. So and I think that yeah, and I think that as far as it's almost that like conscious community and like it's kind of like they like stereotype Africa is in a sense it's kind of like they get like something one thing out of one culture and it's like many cultures within Africa like they say oh Egypt
Yeah,
oh
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing
like all of Africa is not Egypt. I'm like
exactly.
I'm saying
Now, what I was saying is like me, I've been in the United States for a long time, but still my family, a lot of like the the majority of my family is still in Africa. And from different from just like seeing and reading, because even as an African, you have to read up on different cultures. You're not put up on every African culture. You have to read about different African cultures. Like so that's why me,
yep.
like as it stands right now, I'm reading more about things that happen in East Africa. I'm learning more about that part of the world right now because I don't know that much about it. But my thing is, my whole thing is, at the end of the day, is it really enhancing you? And I understand that money is not the end all and be all, but it's an important tool to have because
Hmm.
money can keep you out of survival mode. If you have money, you have flexibility. If you have money, you have leverage. And it's sad to say it, but all I see conscious Negroes do is just enriching themselves and not enriching people that they claim to be helping.
Yeah, you're right. And 'cause, a lot of them are on survivor mode too. So a lot of it is like that hustle or type of thing because also too, America, when you live in a Western where everything is about competition and competing against somebody else and it's very individualistic. So it's in a sense where it's about you, you, and it's just basically, you have to step over this person, um, the cutthroat type of world, especially when you're in the, like, I guess United States, you're in a hyper capitalistic culture, so you individualistic, but I think that's part of the the problem. So yeah,
I think you went out.
yeah, maybe my connection went out.
Yeah, yeah, the connection went out. Yeah, the thing is a lot of them talk about like nation building, and nation building is very difficult because nations who have been, let's say, victims of civil war, let's say just victims of different circumstances that are actual nations, they're still building from the ashes of those circumstances. So to build a nation, as like these conscious people say, it requires more than just like the gift of gab. Like it requires resources, and those resources are often hard to come by and often hard to obtain. And so that's why I'm always on the outside looking in because I choose to be the one on the outside looking in. I have no desire to fit in with the conscious community, or I have no like real desire to be a part of it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that um, the pan And also, you have like I think the Black conscious community and the Pan African community, or two different communities and stuff like that. I'm more in the Pan African, community. I'm really in the Black conscious community, but I observed them, over this couple of years, and I think thing for you really, that and like money, use money, but and live peace. You know, nation, America, like less to get kind of happening or something like that. So if you ever, and I think too, a lot of the westernized black women wear they black freaky or whatever. They grew here. They reminds the women over there in the continent. Huh?
Well,
As far as the
the,
value, huh?
the the thing is, here's the thing, unfortunately. Um, and I don't know if it's coming from the outside or if it's coming from the inside, but
Mm-hmm.
the Western mindset spreads everywhere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it has it has spread to the continent, unfortunately, not as much, but it's still there. But um,
Yeah. There,
but the
but
problem
is I mean,
the problem is that when these Western, because here's the thing, here's one thing that women are good at. Women are good at keeping other women unhappy. And so
yeah, they
when a
do.
woman knows when a woman knows that her place is to be married, her place is to be making being a pleasure to her husband while reaping the benefits of being a pleasure to her husband. Other women
Mm-hmm.
who can't get that will decide that, okay, if I can't have it, they can't have it either.
Mm-hmm.
So you, that trend is kind of coming on the increase, you know what I mean, but not to the extent that it is over here with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these women. Yeah, not to that extent. Because one thing I notice about the women over here is when they don't have it, then they want to make sure that nobody else does either, you know. Even if the guy is like a stand-up guy, even if the guy is on the square, even if the guy is bringing home his resources and stuff like that. Like even if the guy may be a quarter million annual income bringer, that the Western woman has no problem finding a way to sabotage that, you know.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that a lot of them, and that's the thing is too, is where these women who they socialize with and who they hang out with. So, and I think that's the that's the thing. So I think that yeah, so I think that I mean I don't see it that often, and some that do have that mindset, and I think that it depends on too what part of the continent it is, and because everywhere is different. So I think that yeah, and some of them it might have that particular mindset. I know um as it regards to like the horn. I know even sometimes the diaspora that do go there, a lot of them, they're critical of some of the diaspora that's there because they come there, and some of that, the women that are American now, when they come there, it's like they don't, they just don't click with the other women, something like that. So it's almost like they're a different type of different because the West is, different stuff. So example where you hear like the term like, oh, this guy is a nice guy or educated lame or whatever or something like that. You're not gonna hear that like in the home. You're gonna hear that with a Somalian woman or Ethiopian woman or woman from Rwanda. Huh? That's not even in, their vocabulary. Huh? So I mean, so that's one of I mean, I guess that's one example.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. Like, a man naturally is going to want to be with a woman. That's just a natural occurrence that he's going to want to be with a woman. So why be at war with someone he wants to be with? You know what I mean? Like, why be in a like turmoil at all times with someone who wants to uh be like be with that person? And so unfortunately, that outside with the feminism, with the sexual liberation movement, and
Hmm.
unfortunately with the conscious community have gaslighted these features, gaslighted um, being at odds with one another.
Yeah, yeah, yep. You're right, and that's the thing is too. Yep, and I call it like America. That Babel. You have that it's a colonized Babylonian type of culture, and that in America, and it's built off like this dysfunction and degeneracy and all this type of stuff. So when you have a culture like that, there's no nothing to check check the Western woman. So the Western woman then she can use the court system, or the government, or basically the court system against the dude, and basically like what do you call it? You can't really the problem if you do any type of critique, and that's the problem. Uh,
Yeah,
whether you're in the UK, America, Canada, you know,
yeah,
they're on that matriarchy stuff.
yeah. Um, I'm gonna end it on this note. Um, I think it's gotten to a point where like a lot of these Western women um are afraid, and and unfortunately a lot of these Western men too, they're afraid of like classic manhood. They're afraid of classic African manhood. That's their biggest fear, you know.
Yep, I agree.
Unfor-
And then yeah, then on top of that, you have like especially black male masculinity trying to destroy. Then you have like the alphabet agenda that that's in the state. So you having all type of tax have going on. So it's, whether oh no and all type of stuff, whether acting people are acting like there's like no such thing as a male and a female, and it's all like some type of social construct and all this type of stuff. But there's clearly science and biology behind it and stuff like that. So it's pretty bad, and I think that you got so much stuff that's going on. So
yeah. Nah, but I want to thank you for coming on. I really definitely appreciate getting different perspectives and also just talking about these things. I enjoy talking about these things, and I enjoy like actually talking to people about these things who can contribute something, contribute their point of view to the affair. And I can definitely appreciate your point of view in this matter. And I may go live on I may go live like on Friday probably, and you're more than welcome to just come back. You know, I'm trying to be more consistent with going live because I barely go live. I'm trying to be more consistent with it, but yeah, you're more than welcome to come back.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So, and I think that, yeah, you're right. And people, and I think these conversations need to be had. And I think this is why you're starting to see a lot of stuff that's content creators talking about a lot of these things, even the whole thing with the whole
Mhm.
Kevin Samuels and stuff like that. You know, what do you call it? People, I mean, making videos, about a lot of this, these issues. But I think also, um, I hear that women are saying, "Oh, I'm not being approached no more." Or some on videos, stuff. Dudes are starting to, see things, but like, so to me, the universe or nature is gonna have to balance itself out. So, and I think this is all a reaction to the culture, and people need to understand. We have a serious problem going on. In the West. Huh?
Definitely, definitely, most definitely. Yeah, with that being said, those are some good final words. And for those who tuned in, thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back with another one. And as
All right.
I always say at the end, Unjarallah.